Welcome back, y'all. Welcome back to the TECHNESS Corner with your host, Seb Lukas. My name is Sebastian Lukas, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and hello, depending on where you are in the world. Today, we've got a quick video for you all. We're taking this GPU and we're popping it in a family member's computer. It's a downgrade essentially because the GPU in there is a little too powerful for just general web browsing, which is what that kitchen computer is used for. So yeah, we've got something a little bit fancy still for that purpose, but will suit it quite well in a market where it's really difficult to come across GPUs of any sort of value per se from yesteryear. Still, that may change in the next couple of weeks to months, so look out. This might be an inkling of that actually starting to happen with an ASUS 750 Ti OC edition, 2GB of GDR5 memory. That should be sufficient enough to even activate Windows 10 in this case with GPU acceleration for browsing, unpin that CPU just a little bit more so it's a bit more receptive and snappy regarding any additional multitasking that's computer might be asked to do at the same time. So thank you for joining me and let's get stuck right on in. But first, a word from our sponsors. If you need to upgrade your space, and if you're feeling like it's a frame race, fuck that marketplace. Come to TechCore. With every $1,000 purchase, there's a free fruit basket thrown in. So you're feeling out of place, and you want to join the master race. It's easy at TechCore. Come down to TechCore where you can buy yourself a GPU with a thrown-in power supply that'll never power it and end up being a brick. It's a massive commercial place, and if you can't get to our space, means you're an idiot, but we're online in your face. TechCore, TechCore. Oakley dokley, so we are back in the good old comfy new ergonomic chair, and what do we have here? Closer inspection, has not been tested yet, looks pretty decent. Does not look like there's any damage. There looks like there's a slight bit of oxidization just around here currently, not something that you can rub off quite easily, but there doesn't seem to be any damage per se that's visible upon first inspection while walking back towards the car. So I just picked this up through Facebook Marketplace. There's 750 Ti OC edition model, and it's a great card, 2GB of GDR5 memory that will enable you to get by until you can get yourself a proper GPU, holding its value to an nth degree. These are going for upwards of $150. People are still asking for them, $120, $100. Got it for $50. So a 50 bucker will do the job, and it will free up some additional resources that can be utilized to build elsewhere. So we'll have a closer look at that as well in a second. On a side note, I did notice that it does have a PCIe slots, 6-pin slot requirement. I actually currently have a 1050 Ti OC with no PCIe requirements in this current computer that we're exchanging this graphics card with. That may cause a problem because I actually checked and it specifically said on the website I went to that spec'd this up for me that this was a no connections, so PCIe based power connected card. So why it has a 6-pin there is beyond me, frankly. Don't understand that, but if it's there, it's there for a reason. It's probably the version before that version of this card which I was looking at. Before they refined it and made it more energy efficient, it requires one slot each. So let's have a closer look at the computer that we're going to pop this into. Okay, so let's get a closer look at what we are dealing with essentially. It's old in-wind case. Very, one of these cases, like when you pick it up from the angles and underneath, it literally rips your hands to shreds, frankly. To be really honest, I don't like this case in that regards, but to work in, it's a debatable, depending on what you're doing. It's only got a micro ATX case in it currently, plenty of space, unconventional sort of cooling from bottom to top, takes everything in from the bottom. Got 3 there. Depending on what you have here, you might not be able to fit all fans in. Something to consider if you were to get this secondhand in this case. But here we've got the culprit in pursuit, per se, and as you can see, there is no connections whatsoever regarding PCIe, taking and drawing all the power it needs, which is about 75 watts tops from the motherboard PCIe lanes. So we're going to take that out, unclip it. Don't forget to unclip it, and sometimes they will reclip itself. So there it is, unclipped. And we've got ourselves a MSI 1050 Ti OC edition. It actually boosts really well, this card. It goes to waste. It has to go into a computer that can still get some gaming out of it, frankly, even if it's a budget orientated computer. It can boost up towards of 1900 megahertz, a GDDR5 memory, 4 gigabytes. And yeah, currently they retail for about $320 to $400 new. It's insane when these used to be about $220 new pre-COVID, a couple of years ago now. So people selling these second hands upwards of $250, $300, even asking more, even asking the new price. Like, people can't siphon out a new variant of this card for themselves. With that value, just for browsing alone, it's not worth it. Decided to downgrade that computer in the kitchen for web browsing per se, and Netflix and whatnot. We're chucking in this 750 Ti ASUS model. I believe it's a direct U, at least I thought it was a direct U, but it doesn't seem to be. Everything seems to be intact. The only problem, it's got 2 DVI, 1 HDMI and a VGA. The only problem was it's got a PCIe connector requirement for power as well. So it's a little bit more power hungry potentially. Keeping that in mind, the warranty when void sticker has been removed. So it's something to note. This has not been tested yet. As well as one of the heat sinks is slightly bent here. Okay. I just noticed that now. So I might try to unbend that per se a little bit. Should not make much of a difference. Just the fact that it might have had a hard blow at some stage. Something to now be vigilant over. Okay, that's straight. So now what we're going to do is just plug it in essentially and screw it in. Now there's one problem. I'll show you guys what the problem is. So the problem's going to be, I've got a feeling from memory that we need to power that PCIe connector. It's only a 6-pin, but this PC came with a semi-modular power supply from a reputable source, but I was unaware, at least at the time, when this was acquired by a family member, that it is missing all the additional cables that are required or that would have come with this power supply. So, you know, I have to somehow figure out a way to, without, if I'm not going to exchange this power supply, and I may be buying a spare one in the next day or so, which this could become the spare. But in the meantime, we need to find out whether this graphics card works to begin with, before that's too late, and that ship has sailed regarding any potential exchange or money back or return. So the only thing we've got available are literally 2 connections, which are got SATA ports and Molex. That's it. Obviously semi-modular, so we've got the 24 pin that's coming from it. We've got the CPU pin that's coming from it, and a couple of additional cables coming from it. But the only option to power this 6-pin is either SATA conversion or Molex. So in this case, we do have one Molex adapter connected to a Molex here. So we're going to do a tried and true little trick. Should be fine as redundant additional power for this graphics card. That shouldn't be pulling too much in the 6-pin. We are going to take an adapter. Now I've got a couple of them. One of these 6-pin adapters, generally speaking, if you're powering by Molex, it's not recommended. But if you do, you want to use 2 Molexes to 1 6-pin or 1 8-pin. 2 Molexes to 1 6-pin, 1 8-pin. So keeping that in mind, unfortunately, guys, we only got 1 spare Molex. So that's sort of not going to power that effectively. So what else have we got that can help? I've got, again, another 6-pin to conversion two Molexes, which I created myself. That's a little bit longer, a little bit with a braided line. I've got, okay, so we just had a driver timeout. That was funny. So again, this is pretty much the same thing I just showed you, just a little bit more versatile. Made it myself. Got the jerry rig / janky tape job there because I didn't end up soldering it, but it does the trick in a pinch. Long-term use, I would do something a little bit more long-term. So that leads us to our last option, which is again one of these 6 pins to 2 Molexes, but this time I've got a Molex to 2 Molex connector, which will connect those up together, turning 1 to 2 to 2 to 1 6-pin. And just simply, if it was a 3090, I would not recommend it, but because it's a 750 Ti and we're not going to be overclocking it, if anything I'll undervolt it for long-term use and downclock the core just a little bit. We got ourselves something that, providing it's long enough, which I believe it just will be, we'll be able to power our GPU. So let's turn that around and let's see if we can get some power happening, people. Close that up. First things first, a moment of truth. I'll just get as much slack on that as possible. And will it fit? Will it fit? Just enough slack to not cause any damage. Double check those fans are okay. Yes, they are. Everything else has not been touched. We should be ready to test power the system. So I'll grab a monitor and a spare keyboard and we'll fire her up. Now, on a side note, I'm not too worried about the drivers because the 1050 to 750 Ti drivers are rather similar. If I was going from a 750 to a 1050, I just pretty much update those drivers for the purposes of this computer. I'm not even going to have to use DDU or anything to clean up any registry drivers and stuff, which I recommend you do use, especially if you're changing from NVIDIA to AMD to NVIDIA. DDU is a great tool which is highly regarded pertaining to cleaning up and doing a fresh proper install of drivers. If you ever have any issues, make sure you look up DDU. And in the meantime, that's for you guys, a little tip. In the meantime, let's get this set up and come back and see if we can fire her up and see if this graphics card is actually working or not. Okay, so we've got our monitor, just an old ASUS temporary monitor which we use. Side note, a old Intel i7 7700. So it's a 7th gen Intel. Unfortunately, it's got a limited lifespan. If the kitchen computer is ever going to utilize Windows 11, Windows 10 it currently utilizes in this one. Unfortunately, that's only got a couple of years left of support pertaining to security patches and whatnot on a general consumer level. So yeah, it's downgrading for the purpose of maximizing functionality with all the hardware we have available to us. And let's get this monitor connected now. Never been tested. So bang, that's in. I had to sort of lean back into a funny angle. So for testing purposes, this old Logitech G9X will do. She's got like weights and stuff. She's pretty cool. Still working to this day. And a keyboard of sorts. So we do have an old Gigabyte with our old PS2 connection. So we're going to utilize that PS2 connection. Surprisingly, this board does have a PS2 capable both mouse and keyboard port. So we're going to try that first. It may be a bit iffy. We'll see if it works. I know the keyboard does work 100% and so does the mouse. So we'll get that plugged in, especially with PS2 ports. You want them plugged in before you boot the systems. Okay, we've got everything plugged in. Now the moment of truth is we're going to flick that switch, apply some current and power, turn on our monitor, and hope to God we didn't get stooged on this $50 750 Ti OC ASUS Edition GPU by pressing the power button on the front. We've got a green light over here. That's a good sign. We'll see if we can boot straight through into Windows itself. And the drivers shouldn't be conflicting too much, frankly. Now the 750 Ti OC edition will be losing support next. That's something to consider when, if at all, getting a placeholder or a card in this day and age that's secondhand from that era. Recently the 600 series has lost support, and that will be next on the chopping blocks, people. So we've managed to log in. Everything looks okie dokie. So we'll just get in per se. And it was debatable for a second. I thought we were going to have a black screen once we entered the operating system, which could be a problem with a GPU specifically occurring and being fine in the BIOS. But it looks like we've got a working GPU. So Microsoft has taken the luxury of setting up every one of these devices like it was really needing it. Honestly, it wasn't. And we got ourselves a GPU. I'll just verify whether those fans are also spinning. We've got a green light there, so it's signifying healthy power, or at least it's considering it healthy enough power without janked up double Molex to double Molex to Molex to PCI connection. But it's working. I'm happy with this. Just getting a better view on the card itself underneath. Both fans seem to be spinning fine as well. What we'll do is run it through a quick stress test. Hopefully Unigine is on at the very least. Unigine Heaven is at the very least on this PC. Now there is a custom profile per se that will activate. It is recognizing through the ASUS Tweak software, which I like to use sometimes if I don't need anything overly comprehensive. Also, it's got an OC scanner ability. For some reason, this card should have the ability to be OC scanned. It unfortunately has not got the option anymore. So during an update at some stage, the 750 Ti OC should be able to be overclocked. And why that's not available is another story in itself. What we'll do is we'll put it in OC mode. Just get an extra 20 megahertz here. I might go into advanced mode, have a look at what's available. Boost clockwise, I think we'll put it up to 1200 at least. Max GPU voltage. Voltage is on its minimum level. That's good. Memory clock, we're just going to leave on general at the moment. And fan speed on the other hand, we will do a user-defined profile. And I'll make it a little bit more assertive than otherwise would be, so that it's never cooking itself. I don't want it to start cooling the card down once the card's hot. I want it to maintain the card coolness from the onset, okay, by being an assertive pattern and or aggressive cool fan profile. So we'll save that, and we're going to apply that to power target. For the time being, we'll leave at 100%. GPU temp we'll leave at 80, and we'll hit apply. We'll go into something a little bit more pretty again, which is a simple mode. So that's pretty much done. As an interesting test, we'll take our 1050 Ti OC drivers and keep them as the drivers running the 750 Ti OC. Both GDR5 memory, even though one's got 2, one's got 4. We've customized a little bit in ASUS Tweak, the fan profile, bumped up core clock just to about 1200, just to see a general stress test to see how the card's performing. And then what we'll do for long-term use is we will underclock that core again just a little bit because it's just needed for browsing, and we will perhaps undervolt it a little bit so it doesn't use as much power, so that PCIe slot remains schmitten. And with the jankiness of the Molexes, always a debate, so be warned. And let's see if we can get Unigine Heaven running, or some sort of stress test that can pump out some graphics for us, y'all. Okay, so first things first, best I can do for the time being is run Cinebench R15, and we'll do an OpenGL test. I would like to do a DirectX 11 test at the very least, but an OpenGL test will get that GPU firing up just that little bit. And Cinebench R15 features an OpenGL test, which will sort of push that CPU and GPU in unison. Load it up. So don't seem to see any fragmentation or anything. That's a good sign at the very least. And surprisingly, it seems to also be running really nicely and smoothly. So I'm curious as to how many frames per second we'll get on this first run without customizing anything, using essentially the wrong drivers per se. And we're finding out as we speak that we were running, we had a GTX 650 Ti that did 125.06, heavily customized with the right drivers, and this with the coupled with the 4-core 8-threaded i7-7700 with a base frequency of 3.6 gigahertz. This GeForce GTX 750 Ti, not really overclocked as yet, just did 124 frames, 0.02. So she seems to be working. We will run a test of sorts pertaining to this, make sure everything's fine, and then we will test it up per se. So I want to see it boot fine, work fine, and then execute the load test and test fine for about 10-15 minutes also. So let's go. I'll just see basically if it's loading up the profile. It is. And what I will do is I'll get a hardware monitor up and we'll open up Heaven Benchmark. So just quickly seeing how, just generally speaking, how the GPU is being utilized. Okay, so we'll start off with default, English custom, DirectX 11, quality high, tessellation disabled, everything disabled, anti-aliasing off, full screen, yes, system, yes, run, and we're going to hit run, and they'll load that up. So it's a way I like to test a lot of things off the bat first up, so that everyone can have a direct comparison of exactly how it's performing as well on a comparison level to your own GPUs. No tweaking of the settings to falsify settings and or buff them up or make them better or worse. This is how it's going to run. This is how it's going to run. We don't have any speakers because the lovely music from Unigine Heaven is heavenly, but at the moment it seems like it's running cool. We're going to benchmark it. We'll start the benchmark and we'll get a closer look at those current temps as they start to potentially spike up. Okay, so frames per second, we're hovering in around the 50s, 40s now. We've got our GTX 750 Ti activated. Graphics is at 1396 megahertz. Memory is at 2700 megahertz, and the temperature is teetering at 52, 53 degrees, 50, 52, 53, 50, 52, 53, 54, 54, 54, 54, 54. So we'll leave that running, and I'll be back in about 10-15 minutes to see whether she's golden. Just hit 55, by the way, guys. For this type of test, I will expect the card, regarding that assertive fan profile that we set, to be able to be capably cooling itself and maintain no more than higher than 60, 61 degrees once saturated with heat completely after the test is about to be completed. Got ourselves some Japanese something or other thingamajiggy food. I will close, and we'll let this test keep on going. So benchmark just completed itself. Still active, still running, still causing an issue or load on this GPU, the way it's running. But on a side note, our benchmark got 51.4 frames per second on default, 1294 score. Minimum frame rates we're hitting at 8.4. Maximum frame rates we're hitting 97.9. On our DirectX 11 at the 1920 by 1080 full screen. Custom settings / quality high defaults that I allocated and mentioned in previous. What we'll do is we'll run the test one more time, and then I will just compare those scores, double check those temps, and see where they're climbing to now, as it's saturated enough so I know on a fucking hell. I just dropped my Japanese fucking cake. Okay, so we'll run that benchmark one more time. Temperatures 61, 62 degrees still. Starting to feel a little bit more at ease with my purchase because I thought it was too good to be true in this current climate, frankly. If you guys want to get a bit of a gist on the current climate and how it is in the PC marketplace, check out one of our episodes, PC Master Race, in the FB Marketplace per se, and you guys will get a current ongoing seasonal content that is a series, and we're up to episode 7 that we'll be releasing shortly. Otherwise, check out episode 6, which is our fan special, or episode 5 for some GPU highlights. And you can see what we're dealing with in Melbourne on Marketplace and the PC Master Race per se, or is it? So she's just coming to an end now, and our temperatures 61, 62 degrees. I'm content and happy with that, guys, or peeps should I say. Our frames per second again 31.7. This time our score was slightly higher, so not lower. That's a great thing and a great result. Nothing changed, so variable margin of error, but at 1302. Our minimum frame rates per second, I guess the card just needed to warm up a little bit. This time our minimums were 29.9 and our maximum frame rates per second was 98.7. So our minimums definitely were risen up. Looks like this is going to be an adequate GPU for the kitchen and the entertainment slash computer in there. On the other hand, we've got ourselves in the process a 1050 Ti OC 4GB MSI that is a borderline golden sample if you would let it be. That can boost up to about 1950 megahertz on the GDR5 RAM scale, which is really crisp and decent for some 1080p gaming as well, and sort of blows this one out of the water. Not by much, but enough to make a considerable chunk into getting close to, 1080p 144 hertz. You're not. So yeah, guys, I'm just going to let Unigine run for a little bit longer just to make sure. We will remove this PC because I believe it should be fine in the way it is currently set up to be further use and not overly abused, say through underuse, I'll say, in the kitchen currently. And we'll be back to conclude with what was in that box that we just got, because I've been waiting, remember guys, and I am excited. I am very, 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 very excited. Let's go.